H-U-L-L-C-I-T-Y. That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me today I have Dill. How are you, Dill?
Good, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. This could be a bit of a spicy episode.
Yep.
We'll see how it goes, how we navigate it. But an interesting result on the weekend, which generates plenty of food for thought. Food for thought, if I get that out right. So I guess I'd start with your overall thoughts from the game.
I caught the first 20 minutes and then fell asleep. But it's been pretty hard to miss, reading about it, I guess, in depth in all the comments and how everyone's gone. And watching highlights. It's funny because the shorter highlights they put out, it seemed like, we had a few pretty good chances there. That didn't look too bad, but just, I guess, the rhetoric around the whole game. And then, there wasn't anything in the second half that was really highlighted. So.
Yeah, but in a way, it's almost perfect. It's like a counterbalance, or it's what's the word? Like you sort of bring a bit more rationality, I guess, to the discussion when you go, well, actually, we did play reasonably well in that first half, and in particular that first 20 minutes to balance out the poor second half. But like you say, like we started the game pretty well and we scored quite early in the game. Great finish. It has to be said for Pedro. I think it looks even better on the replays with the way he managed to guide it home. Because sort of live, it looks like it's just a sort of standard tap in, but it's a little bit behind him, I think, and he sort of gets it into the corner of the goal.
Yeah. It seemed like he caught it pretty well and like the ball in was pretty perfect too in a way. I think Balumi did. He's been. It seems like he's been doing him almost every other game, like getting a really good ball into the box. But it was pretty good.
Could have had 2 assists really, because he then gets the ball back in for Simons, who really should be making it 2-0. And I think it's an interesting part of the discussion around the game, which I think a lot of people are sort of split on. So I'll be interested in your take on it. It's a game of fine margins, and I feel like we sat here last year a lot saying, if we put our chances away, it's a different result. And so does the result define the performance, or do the chances created define the performance? And you go, well, if Simons puts that away, suddenly we're 2-0 up and it's a whole different game. But he doesn't, and we go on to draw the game. So is it a question, I suppose, of not creating enough of those chances, or is it right to sort of look at that sort of chance and say, well, it shows that we're creating enough?
Yeah, well, you make your own luck, I guess, and that the teams that sort of are doing well and have always done well are the ones who are able to make all the I guess make those plays, but then like capitalize on them. And so, I don't know, fine margins. It's that's the championship, and you sort of need to get over that in a way, like as players, I guess. But that's about it.
It's really funny. Well, funny is probably the wrong word, but it does remind me a little bit of the Manchester United West Ham game a few weeks ago, where United in the first half had a number of really good chances. I think I didn't watch the game, to be honest, but I think it was Dallo or someone got through on goal and basically had an open goal and skied it. And Ten Hag gets sacked the next day, and you sort of think, if those chances go in, does he still get sacked? And probably the answer is no. But is he really getting sacked on the back of Dallo missing that chance, for example? So if Volta had lost his job after this game, we'll talk in more detail about his future in a little bit, but if he had lost his job, you go, is it because Simons didn't put it away? Like, as you say, you kind of create your own luck, but football's a funny game in that way, in terms of how much can swing on such fine margins.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I guess the other thing, Puerta then has a chance towards the end of the half as well. It's probably our only other really big chance. And then I guess you can look at it on, the other way of saying, well, we only had the 3 shots on target in that first half. And,
true.
At this level, players aren't Premier League players. They're not going to put away every single chance. So you actually need to be having that higher volume of chances to, as you say, you make your own luck by having enough chances, to having that volume to actually put a game away. And 3 shots on target at home first half against bottom of the table probably just isn't good enough.
And I guess Tim talked about that. I guess with the fans not getting behind it, but that's a whole other conversation.
Well,
but
we can talk about that. What's your take on? And look, I've seen both sides of it, and I do sort of see the perspective on both of Portsmouth are rock bottom. Their supporters, granted, the away supporters are always a bit louder, but they were right behind their side the whole way through. So, is there an argument that like it's a bit of a chicken or the egg, right? It's like, do the supporters creating that atmosphere generate better performances, or do the better performances encourage a better atmosphere?
I think with a home game, you sort of like we've always sort of done. We've always had a little bit of magic going away, and I think we always are in the top 5 every week for, I guess, away supporters. And so when it's a home game, sort of it like I'm sure everyone's behind the team, but and I can totally understand why people are getting frustrated with what's been going on. So yeah, like you said, chicken. So the chicken or the egg. I don't know. I don't know how you solve that with home games. Because I think Louis Coyle was talking that like he wants to win just as much as all the fans do, and he was sort of mentioning that he's not really sure what's going on with them, which is a whole nother thing. I think he should probably explain a bit more why he doesn't think Hull's going well at home. But yeah, I don't know. I think again, if the chances were going in, if we capitalized on those chances, it would be a whole different story. But yeah, 3 shots on target in the first half. Did you say that's not great for a bottom of the league side? So.
And I think it's just the 3 wins at home in 2024, which I think I saw that of the entire EFL, there's only 2 teams with worse home records, and I think it was Cheltenham and I'm going to get it wrong, but it was basically 2 teams that were in the relegation zones of their respective leagues. And you sort of think,
yeah, wow,
what do our home supporters have to get excited about if this is sort of the football served up at home? And I think there were patches, I guess, under Racine. Like I think back to that Ipswich 3-3 towards the end of last season, where I thought that atmosphere was incredible watching that game. And I thought, and you look at it and you go, that's what the supporters want. Like we didn't win that game, but the atmosphere was great because it was end to end. It was high energy. Yes, goals always help an atmosphere, but you can't, as the manager, essentially try to put the blame, well, not the blame, but essentially try to criticize the supporters for not getting behind the team enough when you're not giving them something to get behind.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't sure. I read a few comments that maybe he wasn't able to say what he really wanted to say because English not being his first language. But it did seem like he's sort of crumbling out. Like he was in that BBC interview. It sort of seemed like he was crumbling around a few, I guess, harder questions. And I don't know. I feel like in this day and age, you can't really, well, in any day and age sort of thing, if you're one league below Premier League, it's pretty professional. You sort of need to, either wear it or, don't really. I won't say that he talked smack about the supporters, but I thought it was a little disheartening. And if anything, I think it put him closer to leaving than it did putting him closer to staying.
Oh, no doubt. And like we were sort of talking, a couple of us in the chat watching it towards the end of that game, almost saying whether he should be sacked that day. And I guess we'll talk more about the game itself, and then we'll talk Volta's future, I suppose. But just around at this point, with that interview, you just think as soon as you start to go after the supporters, or even when you just start to show that strain, you kind of, it gets to that point where you think you're sort of at that point of no return, where I don't know if he can really claw back that goodwill and turn things around. Look, we could go out and win the next 2 games really comfortably and go into the international break and sort of have a soft reset. But like you said, I think when you're starting to show that strain and you're sort of snapping at some pretty, I thought they were pretty well-deserved questions from the BBC. I don't think there was anything too nasty. Or I think at one point he even accused the reporter of potentially having a bit of an agenda to try and stir, oh, you got your story sort of thing. I thought that was pretty harsh.
I thought that was quite funny. I don't know why he would have thought that. I don't know what agenda there is at this level for. So yeah, I don't know. I as you say, like, if we get the next 2 wins, it's a whole different story. But I almost worry that if we do get the next 2 wins, and this is, I guess, me being a bit of a pessimist around Walter's involvement with the team so thus far. If he gets the next 2 wins, then we're on the other side of the ping pong table, and then hope to God it stays like, we keep winning, or we're able to capitalize on some points. But if we go back to like another 3 losses or whatever, I don't know. It feels like we went so far up last season, sorry, and now we're sort of going back on this back and forth, and we've all been here before. So I hope Ajun has a plan, and whether that's to help Walter out, or maybe help him get some players for the summer, or if he's not with the plan, then we need to act on it kind of quickly, because it's not fun to watch. I was going to say before, we're not really. I feel like the fans aren't angry at the players. I think they're angry at the playing style.
That's a really good distinction.
I don't really see there's any scapegoats. We can say that we're pretty poor in defense, but I'm sure there's people who will blame players in that. But I don't know. I think it's more like, what are we doing on the field? Like, why are we doing what we're doing? And that comes from the manager. So
it's a really good point, actually. Well, I hadn't really thought it through, that there isn't actually a week. And this, I found it quite interesting that the last few weeks, people have sort of been coming up with this narrative that we have this weaker squad than last season. And I don't think we have the same standout quality players as last season. Like, we don't have a Delap or a Carvalho or things like that. But I don't think there's any weak spots in the squad like there was last season. No. Like, we don't come out of games every week going, so-and-so has let us down. Like, how's he in the 11 sort of thing? Which I think does sort of underline that it is more of an overall playing style issue than any particular players.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's all the players that were sort of benched there. They're knocking on the door, because they've started earlier in the season. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head.
Like Palmer and Omer and Zambrano. We did the triple midfield sub. Even though, we're talking a bit about the touches percentages, which was crazy stat that I saw the other day. But just finally on the agenda, or the perceived agenda from the media, I guarantee that, I think it was Mike White was the BBC reporter, but I guarantee that Mike White and Baz Cooper and all of those guys would much rather City be top of the table, undefeated, cruising to win after win, because you'd get more clicks from people just buying into saying, like, how awesome is this? Like, we're doing so well. Everyone would be so much happier, be in much more pleasant moods. Like, there's zero reason that they'd want to stoke any sort of negative thing, because they get all this toxic commentary and messages directed at themselves. They don't want things going badly. They want things going well. And at the end of the day, if we become a Premier League club, they're reporting on a Premier League club, which is, I'm sure, a huge feather in their cap as reporters as well. So I find this narrative that the media are trying to sabotage or find, pick flaws in the club, a really, really poor one. On the
we have had a chance. So I was just going to say, I think it's a bad. Yeah, I don't think there's any of that. Going on, and if anything, it should be welcomed in a way that is constructive, and the hard questions should be hard. And sorry.
No, that's all good. Yeah, no, I think Walter even said a few weeks ago that it's a privilege. He said pressure is a privilege. So to be in that position, to be under pressure, is a privilege. And like you said, like, it's a top league in Europe, in the world, really. As second divisions go, it's the best. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I don't think the questions that he's getting are unreasonable at all. But on the game itself, we're sort of just talking before about the triple substitution. So second half, Portsmouth did score within a minute of the restart. It was a bit of a strange one, because really, like, their keeper just launches it long. They sort of work it up the wing. Nothing too sort of, I guess, indefensible about that. And then it's really just a pretty standard sort of cutback. I think Simons takes a swipe at clearing it and slices it to the top of the box, and they put it away via a deflection, to be fair. So it's sort of a bit of everything that could go wrong for us does go wrong. But we just collapsed after that. Like, I remember sort of thinking, frustrated that we've lost a clean sheet, but, okay, we'll regroup and go. But we just collapsed. And from that point on, it just really felt like there was only going to be the one winner being Portsmouth. And they came so close to winning it right at the end, if not for a double save from Panda.
Yeah. And shout out to Panda.
Yeah.
It could have been way worse. And yeah, I guess seeing based off the highlights and the different videos I've been able to watch, it just what I did like about that Portsmouth goal is it was such a bottom of the league goal in terms of like catch whoever you're versing off guard like in the first minute and fuck around and find out. But I don't know that. When was the triple sub? Was that?
Must have been about 6 minutes. I'll have a look.
Okay.
But it was remarkable.
They weren't getting any ball, and I think what do we got here? I think the figures here were like Puerta it's like 1.4%. Simon Simmons 3.5, Slater 2.4, Balumi 4.7, which he's got the most out of everyone who isn't in the back line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kamara 3.6. So wow.
Which is just crazy when you think. So I think what was it? Panda has 10.6% possession or something like
10.
that.
10.6, and then Hughes.
And you think sort of 30 to 40% of it is that back line, really emphasizing just where that possession is. But then to underline the craziness of it is that we then decided to do a triple substitution of our midfield. So Omer, Zambrano, and Palmer came on in the 62nd minute. But they were coming on for players that had barely touched the ball, and then they themselves barely touched the ball. So you sort of question what's the. It sort of goes back to the whole not criticism, but it comes back to the perplexing fact that we've spent all this money or signed all these midfield players for a style that sort of bypasses the midfield.
Yeah, and I was just thinking before, I would love to see the stats around. Like the same percentages. I would like to see what the percentages were when we had Rosinia, because that was also playing out the back.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah,
and it's funny how that ended up places. I'm still wrapping my head around the whole sacking of Rosinia because of his play style, but we're sort of. I know it's not the same, but it's still like coming out from the back. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think. Yeah, Rosinia's sort of look. It does feel like what was the example I saw today? I think Sunderland last season sacked Tony Mowbray, who was doing a reasonable job and sort of the support of the Sunderland supporter base, and the club moved him on in favour of Mick Beale, who I guess they thought was a more maybe a higher caliber manager or who could deliver results quicker than Mowbray was doing. And the supporter base never really bought into that. And Beale never got a run of results in his favour, and therefore the club never really warmed to him, and he was back, out the door quite quickly. And I think there's a lot of City supporters who were probably frustrated with Rosinia's playing style, but I think there's a whole lot of others who, for me personally, at least, I actually was thinking about it today. It was the first time since probably Steve Bruce was manager of the club where it felt like the club was unified. The club had a direction, had a sort of vision for where it was going. We could see progression. We'd gone from 15th or whatever, 14th to 7th. Yeah. We seemed to be on a journey. And then we sort of self-sabotaged, tore that up and brought someone else in there. Now, look, it could have been that he'd come in and done what Sunderland's manager has done this season and taken us to top 2, top 5, whatever. Yeah. And we'd probably be sitting here going, look, didn't agree with the decision, but hey, fair props to Arjun. Yep. He had the balls to make the call and it's worked out great. But we're just not seeing, there's not been, other than that 3-game patch of wins, there's just not been anything to sort of get behind him and give him that sort of goodwill, which I think makes, and it's not necessarily his fault, but it just makes it really tough to sort of sit here and go, oh, look, it was a tough game against Portsmouth, but hey, we'll bounce back because we've shown we can do it before.
Yeah, and I guess, and with that, I'd like to think that the good clubs, when they do that, or maybe the clubs that might have a bit more, I don't know, I guess who do things a bit better, like they're able to find the managers who can just come in with a fresh squad, and just like get the best out of them. And I know that's not realistic for everyone, but I want Hull City to be that club that we're able to sort of find the right talent for the right job, and it's also it's a big gamble, especially if you're, I'm sure there's like a tiny pocket of managers out there with like English experience, English league experience. So you're always sort of looking outside, and it's a hard one to sort of. It's a hard pill to swallow, but like you were saying before, I don't think our squad's gotten any worse. I think we lost some key players, like or the superstars, I guess you could say, and I would call them stars, like Philogene. Like, wow, he's gonna go on and do crazy stuff, and so did what's his name? Went back to Delap, and then Greaves. Obviously, that was like a huge blow to our backline, but like, in terms of like the sort of the talent that we've got through now, like they're all, I guess you would say, the mean of it has gotten higher.
I think that's the way to put it.
Yeah.
Like I look at like Hughes coming into that back line, whilst Greaves is a massive loss. I mean, Hughes has really stepped in seamlessly and looks a real quality addition. I think Drame coming in, even playing left back, didn't have a great game against Portsmouth, it must be said, but I think, he's naturally a right back. And that's also the frustration, I think, with some of these players is you look at Drame and you look at Kamara, who are right backs and right wing, respectively, not really getting the chance to play in their position, which, Bellumi and Coyle have made those positions their own. But you think some of these players haven't even been given that chance to shine, really. And then you look in midfield, I think like Zambrano, Puerta have looked really quality. Jury's probably out on Melham, I think. Burstow, one for the future. But on the whole, like you said, I think that's the way to put it is, whilst we've probably not gone for the quality individuals, we've gone for the quantity of quality additions to the squad. So it's, last season we're getting in like a Jason Lakilo, and this season we're getting in Bellumi and Miller, and you go like, that's so much better than putting it all on Philogene. Yeah,
you can build a team around that, I think, and I think we've got a team that we've got plenty of new players, but it's so I guess that's where I'm leaning towards, is that like I can't say it's the players' fault at the moment. I think, but if we can hopefully get them all just gelled right, even though we're however many games into the season, as soon as we can get them all gelled right, and different players are like trying to play for the next player's positions, that creates a healthy environment for them to try, like, I guess, outdo each other as well as play a good game.
And my concern with this performance in that second half would be when the going gets tough and the players don't then rise to the challenge. Whilst, yes, it can be said that perhaps that's an issue for the players, I think, to your point, I almost question if it's more of not playing for the manager, of sort of standing there going, I've got this manager on the sideline who's blowing up, he's waving his arms around, he's having a go at me. This isn't working. It hasn't been working all season. And not having that extra 10% motivation to really, pull the finger out and get it done. And that could be me twisting things against, like, there's two sides to that. Like, it could just be the players need to actually step up and they're on big money contracts. They just need to perform. But it just says to me, I don't know if they're necessarily playing for him.
No, I think that's a really good way to put it. I think you're right. To be honest, obviously we're not the players, but they, I don't see how they would be as motivated. And I guess I'll go back to Coyle's comments saying that he's not sure what's going wrong, and like he wants to win just as much as everyone else does, but they're not sure what's going wrong. And I sort of, not that I've always been told, I've never been a captain at a club, but what I do know is that you never want to give away that you don't know what's going on, because there's always something, and maybe he doesn't feel exactly, or maybe he might feel embarrassed for the club in some ways, that they're not performing as well as they should be, but I don't know. I think when they say they don't know what's going on, there's always something.
Did you see as well? I think Slater got interviewed during the week because he'd had his 150th appearance for the club and was talking about a few things. and he said he hadn't had a one-on-one with Volta in weeks, so he hadn't had many conversations with him, and that was sort of a red flag for me as well. It's sort of on the comments about Coyle, it's sort of just making me think: are the players actually having these discussions with the manager? Like, if Coyle's saying, "I don't know what's going wrong either," and does the manager, like, is he working with the players to try and figure it out, or is he just sort of saying, if plan A doesn't work, my plan B is to try plan A harder, or better, or whatever whatever the saying is. But it's a bit of a concern if the players aren't really talking to the manager too much either.
I didn't hear that, and to me that is a massive red flag, to be honest. Because I don't know, I see Slater as one of those players that just, when I think of Hull City, and I hope he's with us for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Like, I'd love to see him. To me, he's not the face of the club, but like, he's someone that all of us will get around. And I think managers that sort of realize that they should be taking a bit more care for those sorts of players. They should be taking care of all their players. But that kind of surprises me that Walter hasn't bothered to, have more one-on-ones with the team.
Because you'd think also that that's sort of part of it, is that if you're having these one-on-ones, you sort of know what's going on in these players' lives, how they're feeling, whether they've got any feedback on how they're playing, or positionally what they're doing right or doing wrong. All of that can help you be a better manager, and and also help you pick your team, things like that. Like, if a player's got a lot of stuff going on in their personal life, or they're feeling really confident, or they feel like they didn't have a great game on the weekend because they were doing X, Y, and Z wrong, and the manager can help them. All these things, like maybe his assistants are doing that instead, I don't know. But all these things you would think would be part of the manager's job. Anyway, votes for this one, and then we can look ahead to the games to come.
Honestly, maybe Pandor. Let's give him 3 points, just because he's killing it.
Where would we be without him?
Yeah, honestly. It's funny. It could have been a whole different thing if what's his name? Richepi.
That's right. Oh, Richepi, yeah.
If Richepi never conceded that really poor goal, I think, in that league game, or the cup game, sorry. Yeah, anyway, number 2, 2 points. Let's go Pedro. That'd be great. And
nice.
Honestly, I can't remember too much of like how everyone else went really well. What were your takes on who were your number ones?
So I gave the 3 to Pedro. Like got the goal. I would have probably given the 3 to Balumi for he creating that goal, and then also creating the chance for Simons. But there was a really awful, I'm sure it didn't make the highlights, really awful dive in the second half from Balumi, where, I don't know, there's maybe 5 minutes to go in the game, and he's doing what I'm sure a lot of players would do in that situation, where you're just getting a bit desperate to try and buy a goal, and he's sort of running into the box and gets brushed. The hand of the player, or the arm of the player, might have kind of gone across his chest, and he's gone down holding his face, stayed down for a good couple of minutes. The commentator was sort of funny, because he's obviously trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, and he's saying, if this is a serious injury, it's like, he's not injured, he's fine. So I took a vote off him for that, but I still gave him the 2 votes. And then I just went Slater for the 1 vote, talking about him before. But I was actually a bit surprised when he got taken off on 60 Minutes, because I actually thought he was probably our most industrious of the 3 mids, and seemed to be trying to get forward, trying to create things, make things happen. So I went Slater for the 1 vote.
He's such a hardworking player. I love watching him play. He's always just, and he could have played that whole game. Like, I don't think that kid gets tired. So
yeah, that's right. Okay, well, we'll look ahead to the Oxford and West Brom games. Interestingly, neither of those sides with a win in their last 5 games. So, on the face of it, at least 2 games where we should be targeting results. We sort of came into this run of games against Portsmouth, Derby, and Oxford thinking 3 promoted clubs. You're sort of looking at maybe 6, maybe 7 points if you're really clinical. And we're currently on 2 points from those games. I think, things can suddenly look a lot different if we go out and get 3-4-0 win over Oxford, and suddenly we kind of go, okay, we can get things back on the right track. And also to the earlier point, if the players show that they've got that bit of fight in them, that they want to make things right after that Portsmouth performance, there's a lot to be said for how we play against Oxford, not necessarily the result, but just the performance and what that means for Walter.
Yeah, 100%. This is the perfect game to bounce back. You're versing Oxford, and they seem like they haven't had the best time at the moment. It's funny because we sort of seem. I always forget to look at the table, and then because I expect we might not be doing as great as what we should be doing, but we're still sitting in 15th, and
which I think for me sort of underlines how even this league is, and that it's the frustration that if we were getting wins on the board, we'd be easily up looking towards the playoffs.
I didn't even realize, but Luton is 21 right now, and I don't know. Maybe we've got it pretty good. Maybe we should let's redo this episode. But I don't know. Oxford should be a really good one for us. It doesn't seem like their form's any good at the moment. And like you said, if the players, if they need they should really be pulling their thumb out for this one. I would want to see like a change in the lineup, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to think who do we have out there. Probably swap out maybe Kamara or.
Well, I was going to say the one thing we didn't touch on in that game was Kamara did go off with a bit of an injury. Don't really know how serious it was, but whether we change things up on the wings.
Yeah, and had Simmons go overall in that whole game, because I know he was all right place after those couple of goals, but
he was okay. I guess he was at fault for their goal, sort of, and he was just one of the three taken off at 60 minutes. So I find it hard each week to really talk about the mids, because it just feels like they just don't see enough of the ball to really judge their games, and they sort of drift in and drift out of the games from that point of view. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw maybe it's a Zambrano start and Omer comes in as well, and maybe Puerta holds his. I feel like Puerta probably needs a break as well, though, because he's played the 3 games in the week off a pretty low fitness base.
Okay.
But it'll be interesting, and maybe Palmer. So maybe you change the whole 3 midfield and bring Palmer in as well, and go with the 3 that finished the game. I don't know. Longman, Jarvis looked okay when he came on for Kamara. I don't know if one of them would start for Kamara or what we'd put out wide. And then maybe Bedia up top, or if Pedro feels up to another game, after 3 days. He's got the scoring boots. He might feel a bit more confident and might be up for it. But look, I mean, Oxford have a good home record, but no wins in their last 5 now. Dane Scarlett, probably their main attacker on loan from Spurs. I think he scored a few goals for them. But look, sort of saying to Dan last week that the Portsmouth game wasn't must win, but I do feel like this one, look, again, it's probably not must win, but it's, we need the improved performance. And I do think it's must win. I think you sort of need to go out scoring multiple goals, getting the win, and the players playing for him. Otherwise, it's a really unfortunately timed international break for Volta, because that's sort of the time when owners can act and make a decision on managers' futures. But I guess I haven't actually asked you the question directly, but what's your stance on Volta? Are you Volta in or Volta out at the moment?
I'd have to say I think I'm Volta out, only because
it's a big call to make.
But I guess it's I want to see a high standard of the management in the club, and I guess I don't know if you guys talked about like Tan Kessler left, and whatnot. So I don't know if there's more rumblings of different types of behind the doors. I don't know. There might be more stuff going on, but I think I'm in the. I don't know. I'm not finding it as enjoyable to watch as a fan or as a football fan, and I'm not really buying that he's really sort of understanding what the club wants from Volta. Sorry. So in that way, I guess I'm Volta out.
No, I completely get it and completely agree. And I think The only thing I've seen that sort of, because I think this game was the one that I'd been on the fence, although I think that my tone has probably suggested over the last few weeks that I'm more leaning towards Volta out. But this was I sort of wanted to wait for this run of 3 games to really make a decision to see where we were at, because we could have come out and won these games comfortably, and you go, okay, this is our season. We're sort of middle of the pack, beating the teams down the bottom, but struggling against the top. And you go, okay, well, it is what it is. But to look so toothless and to be so bereft of ideas against teams like Derby and Portsmouth does give me the concern that we just don't know what we're trying to do. The worry, like you said, like the fact that Kessler's gone as well, if we were to sack Volta, my worry would be that the club just wouldn't have a backup plan and just I don't know, could we essentially by sacking him run the risk of genuinely getting relegated? Like, you know,
that's a huge call. 100%.
So, I mean, I think I'd said in the chat the other day, I actually wouldn't be opposed to someone like Dawson just taking the job for the rest of the season, unless things get really bad and then we have to get Neil Warnock or someone to keep us up. But it's a really tough one, and this is why, you know, Arjun earns the big bucks, because he makes the big decisions and he has to live with them. So he sacked Rosenia, brought Volta in, and he now has to make that decision on what to do. I think I actually saw or heard that he gave an interview the other week talking about, again, coming back to United, the Ten Hag decision, and he sort of criticised United for not making the call earlier when it was so obvious that this was only going to end one way. And he's now finding himself in the same situation.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't want to be him.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Who would want to own a football club? Like, this is the guy that, like, is so popular, you know, takes the fans to Turkey, really charismatic guy, brings in these great players, does everything right, ticks all the boxes, you know, cheap tickets, like everything right. And then it's just on the actual on pitch side, like, you know, appointing the manager and, well, I mean, like in general, signing good players, but, you know, this season in particular, not getting the squad to really gel, or you know, not getting the striker that we need, things like that. And you do start to see fans kind of getting a bit impatient with him, and you think, geez, if even he can't be sort of universally loved, what hope does anyone have, really? It's a tough business.
I wonder if it's because I think I'm not too sure how clubs work, but I would assume that the director of football or a related position, that's what Tan did, right? Kessler, sorry. And wasn't it that people were criticizing his role initially because he didn't have any football experience?
Well, he used to be a football agent, so he did have some experience in football. But I mean, Arjun was sort of getting directly involved in transfers. Maybe that was more of it, because he didn't really have any experience working football, and he was. So my concern initially was, because I know he was involved in like the, I mean, Seri was a great deal, but then I guess thinking more specifically with like Cynic and guys like that, where he was bringing in, he was directly bringing in those sorts of guys, and you're going, well, should leave that to the manager or the, director of football.
And they were on massive bucks as well, weren't they? Getting paid real big wages.
Yeah. So it's, you know, it's a massive game against Oxford. Also West Brom next weekend, right before the international break, also winless in their last 5. Josh Madger, one of the top scorers in the championship. Actually, I didn't get score prediction for the Oxford game.
Oh, sorry, I had 1-1.
1-1. That episode last week was called The Return of the 1-1s. It does seem like it's the standard scoreline at the moment. West Brom, you know, also winless in 5. I think they're actually winless in 7, which is, you know, I think they're still in the top 6. But Corberan, you know, sort of viewed as one of the strongest managers or most talented managers in the league. Similarly going through a sticky patch. And like we sort of said, it sort of shows how even the league seems to be this season. To your point that we're sort of still sitting 15th, West Brom is still sitting in the top 6, even winless in 7. So teams are sort of picking up points and then going on winless runs. And so it means everyone's kind of floating around the same position, which just shows if you can go on a bit of a run, all of a sudden things can look pretty different. But I don't know. I think it's a really critical week for Volta. I really, if we don't get at least a win out of these 2 games, I just can't see how he survives the international break.
And yeah, 100%. Yep. No, back that.
Yeah. Do you hold out much hope of a win from this one since you picked a draw for the Oxford game?
For no, God no. Like
no.
they seem like they're in a position where they seem like the team this season that like if they go on a big like a long run of draws that they're just like they're going to be chomping at the bits to like it's almost worse than well no it's not worse than going on a run of losses but like draws you'd just be getting so annoyed that you're not getting those extra points and if they're wanting to be I guess title contenders or playing for the playoffs they'll definitely be like you know kicking in the heels to sort of get over the line. So I would say maybe 2-0 to them.
Yeah, they're sort of whacking on the back of that sore bottle, and then all of a sudden all the goals and result will probably come against us. I think we've got a pretty poor record against them. I think we've only won 1 of our last 9 against them, unfortunately. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I mean, as I've sort of said, I would have made the call on Volta after the Portsmouth game, in particular after that BBC interview. I think if we're sort of waiting to see how the team responds against Oxford, I don't know if much is going to change in the couple of days between games. Maybe the club sort of waits till after the West Brom game to make a decision, just so that they've got the international break to make a call on a manager. But I think from these 2 games, we'd need at least 4 points for me to. Give them a stay of execution. But, you sort of said earlier, you get into that dangerous position where you go, it's like I don't know why we keep coming back to United or why I keep coming back to United, but sort of like Ten Hag, you go, well, if you're going to make a call, just make the call regardless because, he could eke out a couple of wins or get a few points and you kind of go, oh, well, we'll see how it goes over the next month. And then you're right back here in a month's time.
No one likes a toxic relationship. I don't want to have a bad relationship with Walter.
Which is correct. Like I was thinking about it, I'm like, even under Shotta started his time in charge with some win. I think he won his first game against Swansea and Slutsky did okay. Adkins did okay. McCann did okay. Like I can't remember the last time we've had a manager start so poorly. And therefore not have that sort of bank of goodwill with the support. I mean, McCann, it went pretty sour with McCann during COVID. But then he sort of defied expectations with that League One title to sort of, I guess, reconnect with the supporters. But I just, it feels like it's that point of no return. Like that interview in particular feels like that point of no return where he's just, I don't know. He's just
I don't know.
Gone.
I don't know why. Yeah, and he might not be gone next week. He might not be gone for the rest of the year. But I guess in some of our eyes, he's gone, and it feels that he might not be later on. And I was going to ask this question before: who would take his spot if?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that's the issue as well, right? Yeah, and that's where I sort of go. I actually wouldn't be opposed to Dawson. I mean, because I was sort of trying to remind myself, because I feel like whenever I think of Dawson's time in charge, I think of that Rotherham game we won 4-2, and you think, it was pretty good. But we did also lose 2-0 to Huddersfield and 2-0 to Birmingham during that 5 or 6 game run. So it's not as if he came in and, unleashed the shackles and we were this high scoring, entertaining side necessarily. Yeah. But I think I said in the chat today, I saw Longman scored in a couple of the games he managed. I think Longman's back to fitness pretty soon. So that could be a conveniently timed, Dawson might have a good relationship with him and sort of throw him in and get some goals out of him. But
he's saying,
I don't know.
That's a potential omen, and I think when the going gets tough, you need to start looking at omens.
Yeah,
and we need a couple more omens. So look, if what you're saying is right, then if that does happen, I'm not unhappy about it. So.
Because look, I was sort of spitballing that. It's always so hard to know what's a realistic target as a manager and what sort of. So, for example, Gary O'Neill struggling at Wolves. He's gone from one Premier League job at Bournemouth to Wolves. Would he probably sit on the sidelines waiting for another Premier League job? Probably most likely, or else Scott Parker at Burnley looking in a bit of trouble after this morning, whether Burnley go to Gary O'Neill, so whether he'd look at a top-end championship job, or whether we do sort of throw a packet of money at, we don't even know how much money we've got available to go after a manager, whether we just have to sort of scrap at the I don't know. I can't even think of an out-of-work manager who stands out as an obvious option. It's not like when Shotter went, Corberan himself, ironically, was available and would have been a really good option at that point in time. But there doesn't seem to be any sort of high-quality championship managers out of work at the moment. So you're sort of looking at
going through the same thing. So, everyone bottom half of the table.
Yeah, but it was like your point earlier about there's this small pocket of English managers with that championship experience, and so clubs like us are almost forced to go for these more left field appointments, and it's a big gamble. And you look at like I said earlier, like Sunderland gambled, and it's working really well for them. Norwich as well have found a pretty decent manager, although they lost to Cardiff this morning, but. We've tried it and it's not looking so good. And, even for Chef Wednesday and QPR, who last season with Cifuentes and Danny Roll were looking pretty good, struggling this season. So
that was a crazy time for Sheffield Wednesday. I just remember I was over in, I think it was in Amsterdam on the train, just on like a holiday. And I was just reading that like not their CEO, or like whoever owns the Sheffield Wednesday, they came out saying that they're not putting any more money into the club.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh god. But then they appointed what's his name?
Danny Roll.
Yeah, and I think he lost the first 2 or 3 games and then went on a really good run, and they ended up doing really well. But I just saw, again, Sheffield Wednesday are in a little bit of turbulence. Again.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, did you see this? They lost 6-2 to Watford over the weekend. So
I didn't see that. Wow, yeah.
I think the Watford players scored 4 goals in about 20 minutes or something. It was utterly insane. But look, it does underline that even from season to season, the manager's stock can rise and fall. So look, it's a huge topic of conversation. There's been a lot of social media discussion about Volta's future. Part of me does think that this week could be it. And I think this week we'll have a big say in it, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So I guess all we can do is, hopefully, look, at the end of the day, just like the media, I want us to go out, beat Oxford 4-0, back it up with a huge win against West Brom, go into the international break, get some players back from injury and go, okay, let's sort of reset and take a breath. I don't know if I can see that happening. And like you said, I think when Volta's coming out with the comments that he has, unfortunately, he does run the risk of losing people almost permanently. It's very hard to come back from things like that sometimes.
Yep. We love our club.
Yeah, that's it. Well, look, thank you for joining me to talk about that club this week, Dill.
That's so good. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And thanks everyone for listening in. It is the international break next week. So we'll come back with another one of our flashback episodes and then review these. Well, what I'll say is if there is a movement on the manager this week, we might come back and do an episode next week while it's all still fresh. Otherwise, we'll do our review episode as usual over the international break and then preview the games following that international break the following week. But until next time, come on, City.